Immediately, we're live, and I have a wonderful technical malfunction. This is awesome, guys. There it goes. I mean, we're going to have to live with that for now. Yes, as soon as I hit the live button, the mouse decided to die on me. Brilliant. Welcome to the wonderful world of streaming on YouTube with the crew of zero. There's no crew. It's just me here hanging out with you guys. Welcome to Filmmaker IQ. It's been a couple weeks since I've said hi, anything. Hi, Nate Films Tutorial. I'm John Hess. Yes, you are. We are all John Hess. It is Spartacus now. As long as you're not Elon Musk. Don't say that. All right. Welcome. 10 confused reviews. All right, cool. So the topic I put on today's stream was the new HFR. And I've been getting a lot of people kind of been interested in this new technology that's being utilized for the new Avatar 2. And I wanted to talk about it because it's actually interesting. If you are worried that I am going to now say jump ship and jump to the HFR crowd, I wouldn't say that, but I think the new idea is actually kind of interesting and fascinating. Although part of me is also like, why do I care that hard about this? All right, so if you don't know anything about there's this new thing, the new Avatar, the Avatar re-release, and the new Avatar 2 is being touched by something called True Cut Motion. And True Cut Motion's idea, their pitch is they're trying to reduce the term. The term is confusing, judder and stutter. And I kind of got into a discussion with a friend of mine who works at the ASC, and the industry of movie production calls it judder. Judder is the snappiness of the motion, the tick 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 of the motion of 24. It's the kind of what gives 24 the character. In the film world, that's what judder with a T. In the television world, judder is the timing of the framing. That's what is considered judder in certain parlances of the television world. That's called judder with a D. Now again, judder with a D in the film world also means that stutteriness of 24 cadence motion. Although True Motion does call that judder with a D. So it does. So I mean, it's a really it's really annoying the terminology. Anyhow, so the True Cut Motion's idea. I'll just get to it. If you Google it, maybe after we're done streaming here, you can look at it now and just have me playing in the background. You can actually see, so there's a couple samples they have out there. So the problem with high frame rate obviously is, I think my lights are blinking. I think it's the warm values or something's going on with them. It's weird. Anyhow, the problem with high frame rate is it doesn't look great. I think all of us here are, if you're watching my channel, if you're tapped into my channel, you're probably agreeing with that. A lot of people have discovered my channel by looking up why the hell people still shoot 24, and I'm the guy that shows up. But anyhow, the problem with high frame rate is it doesn't look good. So the issue, however, is that in HDR, and HDR is high dynamic range. Again, we're talking about HFR is high frame rate, HDR is high dynamic range. In HDR, when you get the screen really, really bright, like brighter than we're used to at home, with the old traditional theatrical projection, traditional television viewing habits, if you get the screen really, really bright, the judder of the frame becomes more apparent. That's just the nature of biology. The brighter you make it, the more apparent, stuttery the judder of the image will become. That's the truth. So how do you counter that? Well, the idea was, we can go with high frame rate, and I don't need to hash it over again. The Hobbit failed. Ang Lee's 2 movies in high frame rate didn't impress anybody. So obviously high frame rate's not a solution. However, we can use high frame rate to try to alleviate the stutteriness of 24 while still trying to maintain the look of 24, but using high frame rate to alleviate it. So that's what the new HFR, at least the new developments in HFR, is talking about. Jack says, is it true that cinema screens are 43 nits and HDR truly starts at 1,000? I don't know the exact numbers, but that doesn't sound off. Maybe it's 1,000. It seems awfully bright for HDR. It might be higher. It might be more in the range of like 300 or 400 for projection. Maybe for like television, it might be 1,000. I don't know. I have not researched this, so don't take my word for it. But the idea is that HDR is considerably bright. It can get considerably brighter, and that does exacerbate the stutteriness of 24 frames a second. So, how do we use high frame rate to essentially create more nice smooth motion in terms of 24? Well, that's an interesting thing. So the way I'm going to describe it is the reason why 24 frames a second looks stuttery on a very high bright display, which are modern like sample and hold OLED TVs are like that, is because the frame itself is something called sample and hold. Each frame is held on screen for a certain period of time and then immediately switches to the next frame. And so you get this, so you see the stair step, you see the edges between the frames. You see when one frame starts, the next frame starts, you see that edge. And when you watch a movie, and I'm going to do a video on this, I've had the script almost all the way, well, I've got it like 2/3 of the way written. The way the human eye kind of perceives motion, you don't see in frame rate. You do see kind of in periods of like a tenth of a second. So when you watch a high frame rate in a really bright screen, you're going to see like at least two edges. You're going to see the edge of one frame, the next frame, and the next frame. So you're going to see those edges. Kind of the same thing happens when you drag a mouse across the screen. You see many various mouse pointers. It's called the phantom ray effect. So your eye will collect those different frames together, right? Hold on, hopefully I'm just checking out your guys' comments here. So, talking about phones, let's see, motion smooth. We'll talk about that in a second. All right, so let me get back to this. So you see all those edges. So the question is, can we maybe round off those edges so that they're not so apparent, but they're still kind of relatively there? Think of it this way. Say you got 24 frames a second. Let's say you want to bump up to 48. All right, so so to go from 24 to 48, you have one extra frame in between each of those 24 frames, right? So frame A, in between frame B, right? Now, if that in between frame is exactly equal distance from frame A to B, that is true 48 frames a second. You have, a dot going here, here, here. That's true 48 frames a second. Now, what if we take that middle frame and weight it toward one end or the other end? So instead of having equally spaced dot, dot, dot like that, a motion that travels from here to here to here, what if it travels like this, here to here, and then here to here? So it's weighted toward one frame or the other. And essentially what that does is instead of seeing that hard edge between each frame, you see kind of a movement, slight movement, and then movement, slight movement. So it's more of a stair step. It's more of a progression, an evolution from frame to frame, rather than an equal smooth all the way through frame. And I gotta admit, the effect, not bad, not bad. I don't, however, feel that is true HFR. So I'm not feeling. It's not like I'm saying I was wrong. It's like, no, I think it's in the right direction. But I still don't, there's still some things that are off about it. It still just doesn't quite look right. So then I talked about sample and hold. Sample and hold is when you see one frame and you see the edge immediately. And somebody in the comments already talking about it, black frame insertion. In traditional movies, when you go to the old-timey movies, they call them the flicks because they would flicker the image. So in an old movie theater, you would never see the edges butting up. You would see frame, black, and then the next frame, black, frame, black. So you never saw the edge because the edge didn't exist. There was always that black insertion, black frame, that black shutter inserted between every single frame. In fact, it was twice or three times a second. Now, in a movie theater, also because it's dark, when it's dark, your eyes will relax. They will tend to blend the motion a little bit better. So the best motion for 24 is in a darkened theater with the flicker look into it. So I still maintain that's probably the best way. Now, my friend who's the ASC, who works for the ASC, and he's telling me it's pretty cool. I gotta admit, it's nice, it's neat, I'm impressed. I'm not sold. I'm impressed. Believe me. I'm like, you guys pulled it off. You made the high frame rate look decent. But the question is it high frame rate at that point? Is it high frame rate, or is it just 24 frames a second with some just dressing it up a little bit with some extra little bits to kind of carve out the look? Because you're still maintaining that the look of 24 to an extent, because there's an example that I watched with an overhead tracking shot where the car drives along the street, and honestly, because when you track something with your eyes, something different happens with your peripheral vision, because your peripheral vision reacts differently. If you track something with your eyes, you notice it just looks it looks, I get that video soap opera look when I track something with an eye. So it's not quite there, but it's I admit it's pretty good. Pretty good. So yeah, I think it's got some direction to go. The thing is, though, and I'm gonna be my old man self here. I don't think people care. I seriously don't think that. I think people go to the movies not for incredible. They go for a visual experience, yes. But I don't think HFR brings the visual experience. I'm not even sold entirely on HDR. I've seen a professional demonstration of HDR, which really, HDR, again, high dynamic range, is really allowing the screen to get really bright. I've seen some great effects with it. I've seen some great things with it. But to me, it's cool. It's cool. I don't go to the movies. If I was going to Disneyland and there was this like, demonstration, I think that'd be really cool. But I just feel like it's not that exciting. As I want story, I want action. I think a good example is Top Gun Maverick. Top Gun Maverick is unequivocally the biggest hit of the movie, biggest movie in 2022, bar none. We'll see what happens with Christmas. Maybe Avatar 2. I don't know. I just don't see the excitement over Avatar 2. I think there's a lot of people talking about Avatar 2, but I just don't feel like that's going to be the big draw. It's going to do well. It's going to do very well, but I don't think it's going to be Top Gun Maverick. I think Top Gun Maverick, don't get me wrong, they also incorporated the highest tech as far as filmmaking equipment as possible, and the movie looks great. But I feel like the movie has so much more going for it than just technical spectacular. There's technical spectacularism, but again, I think star power has a lot more to do with it. Story-wise, it was a pretty just crowd-pleasing story. I feel like that matters way more than just perfectly smooth pans with video. Jack Furlong says, "The ASC did a really good video on HDR. Cool. Maybe my friend was working on that one. But HDR, yeah, HDR. Yeah, no, HDR is interesting. Thing about HDR though is I'm just not. I like it. I think it's cool, but honestly, sometimes it can hurt my eyes. If I'm in an HDR theater, it's like, oh man, that's way too bright. That sun's through the window. That's like looking at the actual sun. I don't really need that. I just feel like it has limited. I don't know. Maybe because I'm more frustrated with my own creative self. It's like, give me a good story. Give me a good movie. I'm not so worried about all these excuses, all these other technical things that are more interesting than I don't know. That's just my thing. HDR means to me no more yellow highlights that has plagued digital video for far too long. Maybe. Yeah. I guess, but I'm not. Maybe I'm just proving myself not to be a cinematographer in the sense that I just don't care that much about it. I'm way more into uh, just 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 good story. Anyhow, I'm losing my train of thought. Adler I watched a couple years ago. And you said I can talk about this in another video. Do you think? Yeah, I know. I had that video written somewhere in a script, but I never finished it because I kind of felt like it was beating a dead horse. But I think the problem is, maybe I don't know how to say this, but the problem with that kind of thinking is vertical video going to be, the old, I hate to use the word, boomer sort of attitude. Oh, these kids with their vertical videos. It's like, not everything needs to be one thing. It's the same thing with high frame rate. Same thing, like argument with kids online about high frame rate. Like the belief that there's only one particular style, only one thing, and it has to dominate everything. Like vertical video can't exist alongside with horizontal video, with wide video. Like they both can't find their own particular niches and their own particular applications. Vertical video is here to stay. I'm sorry, it just is. If you're on Instagram, if you're watching stories, if you're doing all that crap on social media that rots your brain, if you're doing TikTok, and I refuse to put TikTok. I've tried that once. Although Instagram has figured out how to like hook me, and that's rabbit videos. I watch a lot of this is one channel called Rabbit Graham, and it's just videos of rabbits doing the cutest stuff, and I can feel myself just getting sucked into that. Like they figured out my crack cocaine, and that is rabbits. Rabbits, cute little rabbits, just being stupid and goofy. But anyhow, vertical video is just another flavor. It's just. We gotta get beyond this idea of technology where there can only be one thing, and vertical video is just another thing. Adler says, okay, but vertical video movies, not IG or TikTok. Well, what's wrong? I wouldn't say IG and TikToks aren't movies. They are movies. And what is your definition of movies? I mean, I think I've seen stuff on TikTok that are essentially short movies. I mean, they're not, 2 hour. Look, if you want to put a 2 hour movie in vertical mode where you're watching on your phone, but is that a format? Is that a medium that people want? I mean, maybe. I don't see anybody sitting down with their phone for 2 hours, like watching a video for 2 hours in vertical view. You gotta remember there are applications for certain things, and vertical video has a particular application, and that's mobile viewing. Because the fact is the mobile devices are just, people are used to holding them vertically, and if you could fill up the whole frame vertically, that's fine. Anyhow, that's my point on vertical. I mean, I should probably go back and finish that video because I bet you that would already do well. Thanks for bringing. I know I'm not trying to be cruel to you, Adler. I'm just trying to formulate my argument with that. Let's go back to your chats. So anyways, that's what I want to talk about, high frame rate. If you came in late, go back and rewind it and watch it, that portion. So it's interesting. It'll probably necessitate me to make a video about the new technology because it's fascinating. It's interesting. I think, though, black frame insertion is probably a better solution. And I think I'm going to go back to the old suggestion. If you want your movies to look like movies, make them in low dynamic range, because I think high dynamic range is too video-y. It's a different beast. It's not, it's cinema, but it's a different type of experience, right? And I hate to go back, because I disagree a lot with Martin Scorsese's take that, they're not movies anymore, they're theme park rides. But in this case, he's not wrong. Like, I think high dynamic range, high frame rate is movie park ride stuff, which is fine. Again, don't get it wrong. And also 4DX, stuff like that, movie park stuff. Like, I'll go back and I watched that Spider-Man Far From Home in 4DX, or I don't know, it's not called 4DX. It's the one where they had like screens on the side. They projected the entire movie theater. I thought that was distracting and very, very theme park ride-esque. So there you go. That's what I would watch. HFR, high frequent rabbits. Lots of rabbits. Yeah, go ahead and if I miss your chats, don't feel bad for putting them up again, because I will miss them, because I will rant on stuff. Sorry to ask again, but what does motion smooth TVs fit in the HFR debate? So I am of the opinion that, I think in the best of all worlds, everything, if you wanted to watch high frame rate, you should shoot it in high frame rate. That's the best of all, solution. Like, if you want the best HFR experience, shoot in high frame rate, because there's always going to be some sort of artifacting that goes on in a motion smooth, algorithmically motion smooth image. It's just the reality. And this thing I'm talking about, this where they weight the frame, this new kind of HFR that True Cut Motion is using. I did watch a couple things where, yes, you do see that motion artifacting. It was a woman with hair, and she was like it was kind of going around her, and the wind was blowing her hair in the wind, and that's just impossible. I'm sorry, probably to do algorithmically. It just looks really weird. So obviously that shooting it the way is the best. However, they are going to get better at it, I think. I think motion smoothing TVs, essentially, again, it's the same issue. People ask why do television manufacturers insist on putting that stuff into their TVs? It's because of that sample and hold the frames butting up against each other issue. That was kind of an early solution to try to eliminate that hard edge that comes when you watch movies. Again, I think black frame insertion is probably better, although black frame insertion comes with its own drawbacks, like it decreases the screen brightness. It may cause flicker if you do it too low. But anyhow, Steve Yedlin has an interesting take on it. Steve Yedlin's the cinematographer for Knives Out, and the movie that if I mention on YouTube, I get trouble, Star Wars: Last Jedi. But all the movies that Rian Johnson's produced. But his take on it is, let the filmmakers make 24 frames a second, make what they want, and then you at home can just go and screw up the image however you want with your frame interpolation. That's fine. That's totally okay. But we're going to make it the way we want. And if you want to, add salt to your food till it becomes incredibly tasteless, go right ahead. Go right ahead. Anyhow, that's what motion smoothing, I think, my thoughts on it. I did test, so I tested this out a little bit. I wanted to see on my Sony at home. I was watching the show called Avenue 5. I should talk about Avenue 5. We'll talk about it in a sec. But Avenue 5 is a very documentary style shootings, and they shoot on very bright sets. So I was noticing a lot of the shots, you could really see the tearing a lot in the shot. I think that's just the normal stutter. I think if it's one of those things where if you really wanted to minimize stutter, you would have to basically not shoot it that way, right? But a certain amount of stutter is acceptable because that's what we expect from a documentary, to kind of look like that. Although it's not a documentary, right? It's absolutely not a documentary. Anyhow, so I did turn on the motion smoothing, and I'm like, nope. I noped it out of there in like 5 seconds. It's pretty bad. Flash Drive Film says, shouldn't it all depend on what serves the story the most? That's what would be called word thinking. So I think what I would say is, cinema has a particular language. Cinema has a particular style that you want to stay inside. Because I think that when people talk about the soap opera look, and it's very important to look at what exactly is the terminology there. Soap opera look. Okay, so they're not referring to like a style. They're not talking about a style of lighting they're talking about basically a medium. And soap operas are a television medium. It's a kind of a video medium. So in a sense that, yes, I think it depends on what the frame rate you should be dependent on the story. However, unless the story calls for you to switch to a video medium, for you to switch to a look that invokes television and invokes, maybe in the future invokes video games, then I don't think the frame rate switching is the tool that you think it is. People think it's, well, an action movie, you should switch to high frame rate when you shoot a bunch of action. When actually the reverse is true. High action, high fast moving action looks worse in high frame rate because you can see the fact that it's not as fast. That's kind of the to me the obvious, not the obvious, but the somewhat hidden backwards logic is that high frame rate actually makes things look slower because you see the punch landing, or you see the punch missing. Really, you see the motorcycle not going as fast as it feels like it goes in low frame rate, because your brain sort of like fills in the details, but you see all the frames like, oh, it's just a stunt man going so fast. And then somebody was asking me about a horror movie. I never pronounced it right, so whatever, forgive me. Horror movie in high frame rate. And I was reminded of, I was part of some of the YouTube, they invited some creators to come out and do some virtual VR stuff. And VR requires high frame rate. There's no, you don't want to do 24 frames in VR. It'll make you sick. Do not do that. But high frame rate VR, like live action horror movies looked cheesy as hell. They all looked terrible. Actually YouTube had, at one point they had the YouTube's creator space, and they invited Guillermo del Toro to come and design a haunted house, right, for it, and let creators like make stuff in it, and they did the VR stuff with it, and all the maybe mixing some stuff up, but anyways, they did a Halloween with VR horror, and like none of it was even remotely scary. It was just so fake looking. And I think that was because of the high frame rate. Because high frame rate just makes things so dull and boring, mundane, like regular life. Because it's very of the reality. Anyhow, why are people more and more ready to accept more and more audio channels and surround audio technologies with not HFR? Good question. I think partly because, well, maybe part of it is because more audio channels doesn't change the character of the experience. It just creates more opportunities for spatial sound. Again, it's hard to you never want to make a direct comparison between two things that are not. It's like saying, it is an apples and oranges comparison. The old phrase, apples and oranges. It literally is like hearing and vision are two completely different approaches to things. So you can't say, well, you accepted more channels in audio, you don't accept more channels in, well, no, it's completely consistent to accept one or the other. But I think with audio, though, it just offers more opportunity for precise spatial placement. And to be honest, though, I think 5.1 is overkill. I don't even care. I mean, do I really care? How many times do you go to a movie and do you really care to hear that explosion happen behind you and slightly to the right of you? I don't know. It doesn't excite me at all. It's one of those things where it's it's cool, but I give up. I don't really care that much. I just want to have a good story. Yeah, with anything, if you're telling a story, technicalities shouldn't distract from the story, but there's room for spectacle too. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I just don't. I mean, spectacle is different than pure just technical. Yeah, the spectacle is different. You can have spectacle without having the highest end technicals. I think you can have some really cool action shots, but they're not necessarily being high dynamic range and high frame rate and all that stuff. Anyhow. Should we trying to be moving away from Rec 709 rather than HFR? Well, we are. More color depth and consistency across. That's what the Rec 2020 is. I mean, Rec 2020 has the allowance for HDR, but it's also a wider gamut, and that's kind of where we're heading toward. It's a video it's a topic I haven't dug into considerably, but we definitely are moving away from Rec 709. Sound design has become much more important if you watch on a phone but listen on headphones. Yep. The sound design is really, really important. Although I will push back a little bit. I think there was a Reddit post and I was involved with. Somebody asked if you had $10,000 to invest in like corporate documentary video equipment. And I listed a bunch of stuff. But this one guy on there who just constantly reminding people that sound is the most important thing. Like sound is the most important thing. Sound is the most important thing. You got to have good sound equipment. He would just brush aside any things like Rode microphones. No, you have to get the Countryman. You have to get the highest end electrosonics wireless setups. You've got to have the best sound. And although I will agree in the fundamental sentiment, the fundamental philosophy that sound is perhaps the most important aspect to get right in a corporate documentary. Probably the number one thing is sound. I will agree with that. However, it's not hard to get that, and it's not expensive. Getting good sound is not hard, nor is it the most expensive thing. You can spend much more money on your camera and lenses and still get pristine sound from equipment that's not as good as the top of the line. I know that will immediately get me banned. I think I'm already banned on most audio forums because I just have such a terrible take on sound. But I think sound is one of those things where it doesn't require as much effort to get good sound as it does to get good video and good audio, good video, good effects. That requires more effort. And then sound has the other advantage of being able to be fixed in post in a way that visuals aren't as easily done, aren't as easily accomplished. Flash drive films just says, I was thinking about ADR and Foley and all that. Yeah. So you can, I mean, we're getting to the point where visuals can now be essentially Foleyed and ADR'd almost, it's taken a long time, but ADR and Foley have been around for, for at least as long as sound has been around in movies. So that's why, if you look at a movie credits too, look how many people are on the credits who are listed as all the people in the camera department versus how many of the sound department. The sound department on any movie is really not that big. Let's be honest. It's maybe 5 to 10 people. I mean, if a big movie, maybe, I don't know, 5 to 10 people. That might be even kind of the location sound. Location sound people, 3 people, 4 people? Boom operators, a sound mixer. How much do you need? You don't need that much as long as you're controlling everything. The camera department is obviously much bigger and much more involved. So, not saying you're not saying you're giving an excuse to have bad sound. I'm just saying that you can get good sound without breaking the bank and without, knocking yourself off like crazy, right? In The Good Nurse, sound was annoying. Acting was good. I don't even know what that is. Oh my goodness. The new Planet of the Apes being filmed now has 4 in the team. 4 audio guys or 4 apes? So it should be more than 4 apes. We really hope the new Planet of the Apes. It's not a Planet of the Apes. It's just 4 apes. That's just a collection of apes. I'm sure. I'm joking. I'm obviously dad joking. Let's see. Go back here. All the scares are in sound design anyway. Yeah, I agree with that. Sorry, talking about horror movies and why they're horrible. You can't make skeleton look spooky anymore, but you sure can make it sound scary, especially if you can't see it. I agree with that. That's why it's I wasn't crazy about that movie John Krasinski made, The Quiet Place, because to me it felt like a film school experiment. Yeah, I get it. Sound is super important. The whole movie is basically, hey, look, sound design, but let's do everything in sound design. But it's effective. I agree. A horror movie without the sound is kind of dull and boring. What are my takes on Scorsese's Marvel opinions? I think we can talk about Marvel in a sense. Don't get too down the road. I feel like Endgame was Marvel's high water point. I really thought Endgame was great. I thought everything building up to Endgame was masterful. Everything since Endgame has been a complete and utter disaster. Not everything. I mean, I didn't even. People liked the Spider-Man Home Far From Home. I didn't care for it, honestly. I thought it was okay. It was okay. It wasn't great, but I feel like Marvel Endgame was the pinnacle of what you could achieve as a comic book mega conglomerate franchise. Wow, you told a cohesive story that worked over a span of 23 movies, essentially. Really a span of more like 8 to 9 movies. But it was an accomplishment, and it was brilliant. I thought Endgame, the whole package was like brilliant. Then they decided to, well, not they, but Disney kind of enforced this turn and burns, and it just got bad. I mean, WandaVision had some potential because it was interesting, but then it just got worse and worse. Well, WandaVision they probably had in the bag for a long time. They were probably working on that for a long, and I did. We can watch last stream I did. I talked about She-Hulk. It's just so utterly bad that I think the Emperor's clothes have revealed themselves that they don't have anything. So is Scorsese right about the theme park ride thing? Well, we're a little bit beyond that. We're a little beyond. I think Scorsese's a little bit off about the whole theme park ride thing, although. I don't know. The Avatar, yeah, he might have a point. But I think comic book movies have kind of started to run their course. I think it's time. It's time we start moving away from them as just a society. I think things like Top Gun Maverick kind of show you that people have a taste for something other than comic book movies that are still part of massive franchise, perhaps. But again, Top Gun's not really a franchise; it's more of somewhat of a nostalgic. I mean, look, I wasn't that great a big of a Top Gun fan. I watched it a couple times. I enjoyed it, but I enjoyed the new movie thoroughly. So I don't think you can make a case that Top Gun was a franchise movie going to that. It's anyhow. That's my point on that. All right. Let's see any other comments. We gotta go back and I missed. Let's see. Comments. Throw us some comments. Let me know what you're thinking. We'll chat about stuff. Let's see. How high is the frame rate is a multiple? Well, I think that's a reference to something else. Anyhow. Little Prince equals planet of a very small ape. Very good. We will definitely do that. I don't think HDR is a theme park ride. The new release of older movies are fixing the color grading and bringing out the grain better. Yeah, perhaps. Well, I think the application of HDR when you have like really high-end extreme HDR, I mean like basically trying to create realism, that can kind of be a theme park ride sort of. And theme park ride, I'm going to like if you go to Disneyland or something like that, they used to have in the old days, they had Michael Jackson's Captain EO presentation. So you go in there, you put on your 3D glasses, and Captain EO, Michael Jackson, come out and like he's Captain EO. I know it's weird. If you haven't seen it, it's hard to describe. But it was like it was Michael Jackson and George Lucas got together and like, hey, let's make a Star Wars kind of movie. Captain EO, I'm Captain EO. And he just goes around space and like bring love to everybody. And he has like a group of like kind of like what the name is that? Tatooine bar kind of scene where a rock band that's just a bunch of fluffy, goofy looking Muppets, and they're all just dancing and singing. All right, so that's the theme park ride I'm talking about. so I think if you did that with HDR, it would look like Michael Jackson. I mean, you could do it like nowadays. You could do it where it looked like Michael Jackson's on the stage. Let's update the reference. It would look like Tupac's. Oh, let's update the reference again. It would look like Taylor Swift was on stage. If you could do like a extremely high-end HDR where lifelike brightness, maybe throw in some holographic stuff, and have like Taylor Swift singing a song about the Hall of Presence, or I don't know. That could be more like a theme park ride. I think when we're talking about when Scorsese says theme park ride, that's kind of closer to what I think we're going for, the theme park exhibition style thing with HDR. Now again, going back and remastering old movies in the Rec 2020 with a little more high dynamic range, sure, that's fine. I just feel like some of the HDR stuff is a little overkill. I don't know. Every time I take a position on stuff like that, I'm obviously going to be overgeneralizing, and somebody somewhere who will say, "Hey, John, you're not really thinking about all the possibilities of this technology," and I'll probably be proved wrong. But that's not as entertaining as me ranting about something, right? That's not as entertaining as about an old man complaining about how things are moving too fast and how he wishes he was still young. That's more fun. That's why you come to watch me, right? Hear me rant about being old, right? Iconoclasms. I don't even know what that means. I have to look that word up. I know I've heard it before. I just don't know what that means. I keep forgetting. I probably looked it up one time. So, yeah. So it's a good time because there's a little bit of lull in the conversation there. Let's talk about the show I've been watching, Avenue 5. Avenue 5 is rather interesting. It's by Stanley Iannucci. I didn't realize he sounds like an Italian bloke, but he isn't. He's Scottish. His parents are Italian, obviously. So, but he's the guy behind like shows like In the Loop, movies like In the Loop. I think he's part of Veep. So he has a very high, fast like delivery, snarky, politically charged. No, not totally political, but politically charged comedy, black comedy. So that's his kind of signature style. So his latest show is called Avenue 5, and Avenue 5 takes place on a luxury cruise liner in space, right? Where Hugh Laurie plays the captain of the ship, and one day they just accidentally throw the gravity off on this ship, and the ship is orbiting around Jupiter on an 8-week voyage to go back to Earth. But they throw the gravity off, and literally the entire ship gets turned sideways, Poseidon Adventure style, knocking everybody against the side of the cabins, right? And it's actually, for a comedy, it's a very dark and disturbing opening episode of this happening. And then what happens is that throws the entire ship off course for 3 weeks, or at least 3 weeks, 3 months, and then 3 months becomes longer. Now, to give you a little bit of a spoiler alert, so if you don't want any spoilers, again, this might be in the trailer. I don't know. The story is that Hugh Laurie is the captain, but he's only the captain in name. He's a captain in name only. He's actually an actor that was brought on to portray the captain. I guess this is revealed in the first episode, so I guess it's not too spoilery. He's only brought on to portray the captain because he auditioned for it and they thought he was really good. And he uses an American accent when he's a captain, but when he's in real life, he uses his British accent. So he's kind of like this idiot now in charge, and they've got literally a character named Karen who just complains all the time. They've got a really weird, cruise director. They've got the socially inept engineer, the aging astronaut, the 5th Canadian on the moon, who's on board. So it's this kind of this weird little microcosm society in space as they try to figure out how to kind of get back to Earth. And it starts off kind of it starts off a little cringe. Some of the comedy is a little cringe in my taste, a little cringe, but to me it grows quite a bit. And once you start like enveloping the characters or inhabiting the characters, start kind of filling up your mind, it gets more enjoyable. It's one of those things where the more you grow into the characters, the more you enjoy the storyline. It's more fun. So it was actually made in 2019, and they originally was planning to shoot 2020. Pandemic killed it, obviously, and they finally brought it back for season 2. Now is being aired weekly on Monday nights on HBO. HBO Max is where you'll see it. So would I recommend Avenue 5? I would just say stick with it for a little bit, because it does get a little bit, the first episodes are a little bit not quite there yet, but once the characters get established, I feel like it really lets you put the gas on the accelerator, put your foot on the accelerator. It starts getting going. And I find myself laughing at some of the jokes because they're really pretty good. Anyhow, so there we go. Thanks for the definition. Iconoclasm is a religious battle between the image of saints and what virtues they represent. Awesome. Data of Pharmaceutical and also Laundry Tan says, now everyone can do whatever, so you'll have any content you want. That's the I feel like that's the challenge. It's like quite literally you can do anything. You know, back in my day, I'm only 40. But when I started doing video making, like the joke was, you know, I can do anything you want, but you know, if you want an aerial shot, you got to rent a helicopter. It's going to cost like $10,000, right? That was the old joke. Oh, you want an aerial shot of your building? You know, we got to like hire a helicopter crew and then fly over your thing, and we got the permits and all that. And nowadays, you could literally just buy a Mavic Spark or whatever, a little tiny one, and just fly it and get your shot. Get it done with. I have a license. I have the 107 clearance. I need to renew it. I need to renew my air competency or whatever, my knowledge competency. I need to do that, but I do have a license to do it. I shoot that all the time. I shoot aerials of stuff all the time without a second thought. I mean, it's so easy now. So like, yeah, everything is, the possibilities are so endless. Now, to me, like my biggest mental hurdle, and again, it may not be physical, may not actually be a real hurdle. My biggest mental hurdle is finding locations and actors. And then story. Story is the biggest mental hurdle. But I guess story was always the hurdle, right? So, I agree that HDR looks like looking at the sun, too bright and unnecessary in many cases. It seems totally analogous to HFR. More ain't always better. I mean, yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's just HDR can look good. HFR just always looks like HFR. Every battle was won, but the war was lost. In a metaphorical sense, iconoclasm is the same with movies. The display capabilities over the content. I guess. I think you're on a dimension and plane that I'm not quite there yet on. Go out in half an hour because John Boyes has a new documentary out. I have to watch it. Sweet. Check it out. Indeed, creating work today is an exercise in saying no, restraint and curation. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. But then again, you know, that's the thing that non-artists don't realize is that art is really made in the presence of constraint. That when you have no constraints, that's when things become non-artistic. And it feels like that way, aren't we? Doesn't it feel like that a little bit with the way some things are these days? It's you know, in some ways CGI it kind of took the constraint off of things, but only halfway there, right? Like I'm just thinking, you know, like, okay, the final episode, I'm going to go back to She-Hulk, my favorite topic. The final episode of She-Hulk has a beginning, starts off with this kind of, they made fun of the 70s show. And they had like, instead of She-Hulk being a CGI character, they painted a bodybuilder green. And I thought, I would have watched that more than the version they came up with. I would have found more entertained by that version. Because it just didn't look, but because CGI makes things possible, even though you really probably need to put a lot more money to CGI to make it look really good, but you know, you can get away with a little stuff. Just go with that, and they no longer feel like they need to. I don't know. To say that show didn't have any constraints, that's not true either. It did have a lot of constraints. But art, sometimes what happens is, you know, art is what happens when you try to work around a constraint. And sometimes the solutions are better than the original vision. All right, I'm even ditching the filming part whatsoever. Act in VR, mocap, render everything, and even pack it up as long as a video game cutscene. I'm not for that at all. So I'll tell you why. Because I honestly feel like that's a lot. There's a lot of guys, and look, YouTube is mostly men. YouTube is mostly nerdy men. And I think the fact that you're watching this stream and not like saying going out and hanging out with your buddies, is also shy men, and I'm not dissing you guys because I encapsulate all of those things. All right, shy, solitary, nerdy, and I'm here by myself. I'm streaming in an empty room. There's nobody here, right? And I can do this because it offers me a chance to be social without collecting a bunch of people here, right? So I'm not necessarily ditching it. The problem with trying to mocap everything and green screen everything is it's lonely and it's just dead. If I were to tell you the best experiences of the film set, of any film set, are the people of the film set. It feels like bringing people together and then having them interact and create the story in front of you. That's the best feeling. That's the best. And I guess you can still do that if you mocap and all that. But what you're doing there is you're stringing out the process and you're fortifying it. And like I thought about doing green screen for a lot of a short movie or something like that. The problem with that is then you have to figure out everything out in advance. You have to decide every tiny minutia bit. Whereas if you were to just rent out a cafe, if you were going to shoot a movie in a cafe, but you wanted a green screen, if you just got a cafe, there's something about being in a cafe that reflects the way you shoot it, the way the actors behave in it, and the way everything just feels different rather than just being on a green screen. I think what Christian Bale just said something about when he was working on that Thor movie. Excuse me, he did a lot of green screen stuff, and he thought it was miserable because it's just. I think that's what the reality of that is. It is kind of miserable. Like that's not the fun part of acting and the fun part of movie making. One bit says nerdy introverted 39-year-old dude. I got 1 year ahead of you, bud. Yep, we're the same. I'm not saying I'm not introverted as well. I'll tell you. So I'll give you guys kind of an inside story. I don't want to be one of those self-diagnosing. I feel like people self-diagnose themselves with stuff, and I think that's just stupid. As a younger person, I was much shyer than I am now. I'm a little more extroverted now. I don't necessarily have a problem talking to people if I have a reason to talk to people. However, there's still, for me, like when I go out to the grocery store, I can't start a conversation with somebody like in line. I just can't. I mean, I might, if they say something to me, I'll be friendly with them, but I would never say, hey, those look like some nice melons you got there, because I know that would get taken the wrong way and I would immediately feel like an idiot. So I picked that for a reason. But anyhow, I can't start conversations out with people. But if someone were to talk to me, I would feel completely comfortable talking to them. There's still like a social barrier to like talking to strangers. That's, for me, I can't get over. So the reason I wanted to bring this, we did this thing called movie, this little short for the live show. We used to do like a bigger set of a live show. It just got too big for me to handle. We called it Film Stars. It was like a Pawn Stars ripoff. It was a parody of Pawn Stars. And so we wanted to get this comic book store so we could use their. And when we went to go into the comic book store to talk to the owner about like, hey, I wanted to shoot, I got so nervous. I got so nervous when I did it. I don't know why. It was the most weirdest thing. Like I was like, my heart was beating really bad, really fast. And you're saying, well, it's because you need to lose weight. And that's true. But I was just super nervous talking to the owner of this comic book store to want to shoot there. We ended up using the place, and I think it was a good thing for everybody. But yeah, it was bizarre. Anyhow, my whole point was like, yeah, that was scary. But I think to the other point, I guess the larger point I'm trying to make, and if I'm trying to make any sense in this weird ass stream of mine, is that I'm like you guys. I think filmmaking is a way out of this, out of being alone and depressed. It's like you can make films, you can tell stories, you can get people together and do stuff I feel like that's the way to go. That's the avenue out. Okay, there's this one. So if you guys know, I've been teaching a college course, and I see this too. I guess in my own college course, there's this one student who is bizarre. I don't know if I don't think he's watching, because I don't think he watches my stuff. But I saw he stopped coming to class for some reason. Then he turned in his assignment. The assignment I had, this project 2, I call it, is where they go out and they're supposed to shoot an interview with somebody. Doesn't matter who, shoot an interview with somebody, right? The point of that is to practice your interview skills, to go out there and get an interview. Again, it could be your mom, it could be your dad, it could be somebody did their dad. That's fine. I just wanted them to go out there and do an interview because I wanted to teach them how to shoot talking head. He said he couldn't find anybody he wanted to interview, so he was going to interview himself. And I was like, that's weird. They turned in his assignment, and then his assignment, he had a lady interview him. And I thought, so I feel like he's got that social anxiety thing going. I feel like there's some social anxiety issues there. But I think filmmaking is a solution to that. I honestly do. I think if you are super like shy and what's the word I'm looking for? Introverted. That's the obvious one. If you're super introverted, I feel like filmmaking is a cure for it. You're never going to get over it. I'm not over it, but it can help you gain that confidence to talk to people and to make friends. And ultimately that's the goal. I feel like, look, the reality is, I'm going to break it to you guys. There is professional Hollywood filmmaking, right? That is one tiny piece. But I think a lot of people, when I'm talking to, people that make money in the video field aren't making professional Hollywood films. Most of them aren't. 99% of all people working in video, making any kind of motion picture, are not working for Hollywood film production. It's a very small part. And even that small part, it's all about who you know. So you need to kind of get more social. Making films is a good way to make friends and make memories and stuff like that. Anyhow, that's what my point is. It's not all about making, I don't know, super high technical stuff. Anyhow, all right. I'm mostly talking about having multiple versions of the cinema at once. Every story will have its own perfect media. I feel like that's more word thinking than reality. I think it's the dangerous thing about word thinking is you've kind of created what seems to be a beautiful sense, although it doesn't have a practical real life example. Like, you have multiple versions of the cinema at once. What does that mean even? Why would you need to have multiple versions? Like, if you were to experience in one version, what makes other version better or different? It's not quite what you think it means. Is what I'm getting at. I feel like it's a half-baked idea. I'm being cruel, being unusually cruel there, and taking that down, because I think the danger is word thinking. Again, the reason why I'm gonna kind of hit on this a little bit and elaborate a little bit what I mean by this is I can come up with a great idea for a movie. I've got a great idea for a movie. It's hard hitting. It's going to subvert your expectations. It's going to rock your world. It's going to make you feel one way and then make you feel another way. And it's going to be amazing. Doesn't that sound amazing? Wouldn't you want to see a film like that? You're like, yeah. You're going to walk out of the theater not only being exalted, feeling extremely excited, but you're also going to be deeply introspective when you come out of the theater. It's going to make you, it's going to change the way you look at reality. This film is amazing. It's so good in that way. And you're like, great. I want to see that movie. That sounds great. I want to see it. So what's it about? Doesn't matter what's about. It's got to accomplish these things. You're like, no, but I need to know what's the plot? It's going to change everything. See, that's an extreme example of I'm focusing entirely on the outcome. I've built this vision of what this thing could be without knowing what I'm even talking about, without even creating a path. I've just created this kind of word cloud of of thoughts and ideas that have absolutely no path to get into that route. I think, and again, the reason why I harp on this is sometimes I fall into this trap. I fall in this trap all the time. I come up with an idea. I want to make a movie about I wanted to make a movie. Example. I talked about this on stream. I want to make a movie kind of parodying and satirizing social media. Great. Let's satirize social media. I want to satirize TikTok videos that don't go anywhere, that are 10 minutes of video where nothing happens and it's just a thirst trap, right? I want to make that. You're like, that's great. Let's satirize the hell out of it. That's awesome. Let's do it. How? And you're like, oh, shit. How are we going to do this? That's the trap. The trap is that word think, that thinking about those outcomes, thinking about that word cloud without knowing how to actually deliver that. That's the thing. It's like sometimes you gotta think in terms of stick your head into the delivery, and the word cloud will generate itself. Don't approach it from the word cloud thinking, rather than the delivery itself. I know I'm being harsh, but I am trying to fight back on every what I feel is bad instinct out there, which I have myself in spades. Believe me, I do. I'm just trying to fight that with kind of a different approach, a different line of thinking. There we go. One bit says, important distinction between shy and introversion is getting into technical psychological definitions. Has to do with how the brain processes things. One can be shy, extrovert, or outgoing introvert. I think my friend would always say I was a shy extrovert. But I was never, well, I don't know. I'm not going to go down to psychology because I don't have that mastery of the terminology. But my friend would always say I was quiet. I was not shy. I was quiet, which means I don't go out there and just ba-ba, I'm me. But if you sat down and talked to me, I would talk your ear off about topics that I was interested in. But I couldn't do small talk really well. I'm better at doing small talk, although I still feel funny doing it. But anyhow. Let's see. Imagine a future with deep fake. Nice. Where you can pick what actors you want to see in that movie, and just picking characters in a game. Yeah, I mean, I guess we're heading there, right? When you have unlimited computing power, you can do unlimited things, right? I mean, there's a lot. You know who's going to get that first, right? You know which industry is going to get that first. Yeah, you know. All right. Yeah, new media video artists scurrying around the underground here. Video design for theater is the closest I come to mainstream professional world. Bohemian artist life gives me the social life. It's true. It's true. I think arts in general is I loved doing arts. I loved the art. My friend was telling me yesterday, is dude, you spent the last 6 months doing theater productions. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right, I did. To me, I don't feel I'm not sick of it. I wasn't tired of it. I was just well, it's time to move on to something else. But when I was doing that, it's I got to go see people every day. And unfortunately, I mean, I'm 40 and we got that midlife crisis going. I'm oftentimes looking at my life saying, well, I should have, today I was driving, man, I wonder if I should have been an engineer when I was younger. You should have picked that path. The fact I've become my own businessman, being a freelancer as what I am, it's a very lonely existence, honestly, as a freelancer, because I don't work in an office. I have clients, but I don't, clients are not your friends. Not necessarily. So yeah, I guess being in the arts is a good way to change that. Grant says, I bought my 4K TV with native 120 hertz so I could get natural no interpolation 4K 24. That is, okay, so we got to parse apart that a little bit. And that is what the difference between judder and stutter. Like judder is the idea that if you put 24/60, you're going to have a 3/2 pull down, right? My argument with that is the 3/2 pull down is not a significant introduction of judder, of the judder, the stuff. Because again, our eyes, and I'm going to do a video on this, I promise, our eyes really take in things about 1/10 of a second. That's kind of the way our perception kind of works. And our brains sort of sort that out. But the individual maybe are, and there's no good way of saying this, but the individual cell cones and rods in our eyes work about 1/10 of a second. That's how. So multiple frames, like 3/2 pull down. When you watch 24 frames a second, you're actually taking in like 3 frames at a time. You're not going to notice the 3/2 pull down. It's not that significant. Again, some people in Europe swear by it. So if you get 120 hertz television, you're thinking, well, I got my 3/2 pull down, I'm going to alleviate stuttering. No, you're not, because the issue has never been 3/2 pull down, the uneven spacing of the frames. The issue is always the butting up of the frames. You know, in movies, you have that black frame, you have that shutter, that flicker that introduces that. In the old days, we had cathode ray tube television. The cathode screens was drawn line by line, and the line disappeared almost as fast as it was written. So you never saw 2 frames butting up against each other in time. Again, old LCD TVs utilized flickering fluorescent lights, and the flickering in the fluorescent light would also produce that slight bit of black frame in between every single frame. So that's why motion looked better on those machines. Modern TVs, especially 120 hertz TVs, don't have that flicker. You want to introduce that black frame insertion to get motion as smooth as it could be. So anyhow, it's not the hertz. Surprisingly, it's not the hertz. Now the 120 hertz is useful, however, because now you can insert a black frame every 2. You can have multiple black frames, which will alleviate issues with like brightness. And also increase the flicker, which will make it less noticeable. So, oh my God. The Animal Life says, last thing we need to is consumers making their own films. Art's one of those things you either have or don't, and it's pretty evident early on. I disagree with that. I think everybody, well, here's the thing. Here's the reality. I think everybody needs to make a film. Not necessarily a full feature length, but they need to make some sort of either not a film necessarily, but some sort of video. I think, and it's becoming a requirement in school that every student going through school needs to absolutely make some sort of video presentation. I feel like that is going to be in the future just as important as reading and writing. Like just because you can't write very well doesn't mean you don't have to write an essay in class. I think you absolutely need to write, be able to make a video, not necessarily a movie, but a video. But anyhow, that's my point. I don't think we should bar anybody from making movies. I mean, if we barred Wiseau from making a movie, we wouldn't have had The Room. So, you gotta let them. Or is it Room or The Room? I forget which one it is. Some story scenes look better in walking around form. Like an old example I know is Half-Life 2. Cutscenes are on rails, and in the film, you feel you're there. The feel scale of some events. Yeah. But that's not cinema. That's not. It's a different thing. I think what you're saying is that you want to have different. See, cinema. Again, we're dealing with the word thing. Cinema is a form. It's an art form. Video games are a different art form. There can be different forms. Stories will fit in everything. You can have a story that's an opera is a form. A ballet is a form. A cinema is a particular form. And in cinema, you can have a, action movie. Documentary is a different kind of form. Documentary is quite different than a cinema necessarily. And so there's obviously interplay between them. But stories can exist in all these forms, right? But I think cinema itself is, I'm going to put a much smaller, I'm not going to say everything is cinema, because I don't believe that. I don't believe TikTok videos are a form of cinema. I think they're a form of movie making or filmmaking, if you want to call it that, but they're not cinema. Cinema is a particular form. And again, what do you mean by cinema? Yes, Paul Blart is cinema. I think Paul Blart is cinema. I think Godfather is cinema. that's how encompassing I'm using here. It's not an elitist thing. There's a format for the thing, which makes it different than documentary. Now, is documentary cinema? It can be. I mean, there's interplay. Funny story. So I was talking about documentaries, and so I was going through, and I never did a video on history of documentary or the type of documentary, but I probably could. But I was talking about the 7 forms of documentary, and it talked about the reflexive form of documentary, which is what they classify all mockumentaries as. It's a documentary that plays on the expectations of the audience and the viewer, or the audience and the filmmaker. So it's kind of making fun of itself or revealing itself. It's reflexive, right? Going back on itself. And they use examples of mockumentary. So I showed the trailer for This Is Spinal Tap. And one of my students said, "Hey, Mr. Hess, is that supposed to be a comedy?" And I was like, are you trying to be offensive? Like, is that supposed to be a comedy? Oh my God. About ready to turn on that guy. Oh, Martin D. Turner, thank you for the $10 super chat. Thank you so much. You said, thanks for all the great videos. I've learned so much. It tells me how much more I need to learn. You never stop. It's just insane. And he said, I love PAL here in Australia. Most of my life is NTSU. PAL OLED is awesome. Cool. He said, relocated to Australia. Spent my career in Silicon Valley. Nice. Cool. And he also agreed that TikTok is rubbish. Yeah, and the CCP does monitor it. Yes, that's why. That's also another reason why you don't want TikTok. Anyhow, One Bit says not significant so long as you're civilized and use NTSC, and whoever defended PAL, even an SD is a monster. Start that PAL versus NTSC argument again. PAL, you moved to Australia after CRT times. I found the flicker to be unbearable and it gave me a headache. I can see that with the 25 frames. What is this new high frame rate? Rewind the video, go back to the start. I talked about it. All right, see you later, Harry. Have fun at the premiere. Hopefully you're still watching there. Seems most don't notice that the first time seeing PAL at age 16, long before I knew PAL was anything about video, I was immediately struck by how all the televisions in Italy and UK flickering. I like to hear that. I like to hear about that. Whenever the internet takes on a topic and becomes sort of like it becomes an us versus them thing. Well, to be honest, a lot of the internet is very anti-American. And I'm sorry I'm going to reveal myself, but I'm not anti-American. I feel that anti-Americanism is sort of a form of bigotry that's still acceptable. It's just where you start to think like everything American is just automatically bad and terrible. And the internet being full of young Americans love to hate on this, it's overbearing. So the whole NTSC is so much worse than color. I mean, it's never the same color. If I mention NTSC in a stream, just go to the comments. You will see NTSC, not the same color. Har, har, har. It's the stupidest, for lack of a better term, NPC freaking term I've seen attached to NTSC, right? It's so annoying. It's so annoying. Now, is PAL better than NTSC? In some ways it is, because it came significantly after NTSC. So they saw what NTSC did. Hey, they screwed that up. Let's fix that. Okay, PAL. Now, again, 50 hertz may be an issue with flicker. I can see that. But I'm just saying, not everything's so freaking awesome about PAL. Not something so terrible about NTSC. NTSC came first. That's all I'm saying. They were first. Can't beat that. While Europe was still trying to rebuild after World War II, America was like, yeah, what are we going to do with all these factories we had left over? Let's make some televisions. Cool. Let's do that. Anyhow, I just hate the the internet was promised to bring us together and it's tearing us apart. Tearing me apart, Lisa. Sorry. And to jump on that, metric system is also metric system. Yeah, I know I know you missed the notification, Veggie. That's okay, but I already talked about it, so go back and watch it. That's what the replay is for, or just wait till after. Um, Metric system. By the way, I'm going to I'm going to dunk on the metric system for a little bit, and this is somebody who has gold medals in metric mastery, and I know metric master. I know the metric system very well. Believe me, I really do appreciate the accuracy of a metric system. In fact, when I do 3D printing, it is all metric. I hate using inches when I deal with 3D printing because I find it incredibly unexacting. It's terrible. I don't like the imperial system. However, when I built this set, you better believe I built this in freaking inches and feet because metric would not work. My brain cannot handle metric system in terms of and no one talks about this, and it bugs me every time I see the debate about metric system versus imperial. It's like, well, your metric system is based on nonsense stuff, right? Okay, sure, but an inch to us Americans is about the size of my thumb. That's about an inch. So I have a visual representation of an inch right here on my body that's I can kind of visualize very quickly, and it's always with me. Now, is it exactly an inch? No, it's not. It's about an inch, right? And that's the thing about the imperial system that I think it's what's useful about the imperial system. It's not as finely tuned and precise as the metric system. I totally understand that, and I completely agree with that. However, its scale is much more human than the metric system because I don't know what a meter. I don't have anything on my body that is a meter. I mean, maybe the width of my arm to my chest is a meter. That's kind of a meter, but that's not very visual for me. Like a thumb, that's very similar, very simple. So the imperial system is useful because the measurements are large enough that humans can kind of grasp them. Like an inch, we know. A foot, we can visualize. A meter is too big, and a centimeter is too small. So there's not really a good in between for the metric system. I get that. I get it. Oh yeah, it's you can 1 cubic cc, 1 cc of water, 1 cubic centimeter of water takes 1 calorie to raise 1 degree in Celsius. I get that. That's cool. That's awesome. That's what makes metric system perfect for science. And I would never recommend you do anything else. But for everyday stuff like building a set or something like that, or even focus pulling, the imperial just feels way more intuitive. Now, other people will say, I'm sorry, I'm going to go on a rant. This is my freaking show, so I can rant about this. So, the great thing about metric system is you can convert between units. Like, I know how many kilometers it is from here to the sun, and therefore I know exactly how many centimeters it is. That is not true because of something called significant figures. And that what bothers me a lot. And somebody's asking, isn't a yard a meter? Yeah, basically, but I don't really use yards that much, except for like football, for like those kind of distances. But yeah, in that sense. But then again, relative scale. Yard in a football field, and again, this is talking about the conversion of units, right? A yard in a football field, American football, freedom football, as they call it, a yard in a football field is relative to the football field. So in a football field, the yard itself is kind of the most smallest unit of measure. In the scale of a football field, 100 yards from end zone to end zone. That's the scale, right? I'm not interested in inches. Like, you don't need it's 36 inches in a yard. I don't care how many inches there are in a yard in a football field because that's the wrong scale to use. So again, talking about the distance from here to the sun, I know how much that is in kilometers. What does the difference does it make? How many centimeters it is? And if I told you how many centimeters it is from here to the sun, am I giving you an accurate statement, or am I giving you a very inaccurate, rounded off number? Because it is not exactly whatever it is to the sun or to the moon or whatever. In kilometers, when you talk about kilometers, you're chopping off a huge number of significant figures that you would need in order to create the accuracy of the millimeter. So that conversion between the large and the small scale is not as useful as you think it is. Like, oh, it's so useful for me to know how many millimeters is to the moon. But you don't know how many millimeters, because when you talk about kilometers, you're only using like 3 significant digits, like 93 million. Well, it was 93,135,326.745 kilometers. Okay, that can be converted to millimeters, but saying it's 93 million kilometers and say that's 93 million centimeters, that's not really accurate because you've lost the scale. The scale's not appropriate. I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody. It's a very nuanced thing. I've just never seen anyone argue that when it talks about metric and imperial. Again, I live in a world where people say that U.S. doesn't have a metric system. We have metric system. You don't go to the store and buy a gallon of Coke. You buy a 2-liter bottle of Coke. Like you could buy a gallon of milk, sure, but milk is like the only thing they sell in gallons. Well, like apple juice and stuff like that. But mostly, if you want to buy soda, you buy it in 2-liter bottles. Our nutritional facts are always in grams. All medicine's in grams. So we live in a world where we use both, and that's the way we like it. Dang it! I get 40 hectares on a hogshead worth of gas, and that's the way I like it. Damn it! Yeah, funny thing is the imperial system is defined in metric because it should be, because metric is exact. That's the beauty of the metric system, and that's everything should be. We should have one system in which we define everything, and sure, define it in metric. But unless we come up with a term for like a tri-centimeter, like, oh, it's a tri-centimeter, it's 3 centimeters. That's kind of like an inch. You buy a 2-liter bottle like only insane people do it in the rest of the world. Yeah, I'm not saying anybody's insane for using any system. Anyhow. Well, let's go back to your comments. I've been way off of my rant about metric system. Neon's you got my point right there. You basically said it in fewer words than I did. Metric is great for measuring. Like I said, when I do 3D printing, always metric. My buddy was like working with inches for a while. Like, don't do that, dude. Don't measure it in inches. Just stop. I mean, if you're trying to make even if you're making a human-sized thing, always metric. Always. Because the precision, you need that precision. Because the thing is, for like large-scale stuff, inches is fine. But if I want precision, if I want the machine precision of a 3D print, you need to be talking millimeters. You need to be talking in tenths of millimeters. And my dad was an engineer. And my dad, I now inherited his calipers, his veneer calipers, and they have both millimeters and thousandths of an inch. The way you did precision in imperial was to go with thousandths of an inch. And to me, that's like, that we're not used to that at all, right? Millimeters is so much easier, so much more common than thousandths of an inch. But, anyhow, don't use thousandths of an inch. my dad would totally agree with that. Although my dad, when I was taking science and I was doing the chapter on significant digits, my dad got so pissed off. He's like, why would you do that? And my dad was very, very sane, rational, very level-headed human being, but he didn't understand significant digits. And if he was alive today, I would sit down and explain why significant digits matter so much. Partly because I've had experience with them and understanding why they are so crucial to understanding how measurements are made. Because it's all about accuracy. I can only be so accurate. Right, my instruments can only give me accuracy down to a certain level. Beyond that, I don't know if it's my accuracy is 0.1, a tenth. I don't know if it's 0.15 or 0.12 or 0.10. I have to let people know that my accuracy is so. Anyway, that's a deep topic. It's like when I was doing videos about depth of field and focusing distance. You don't realize how hard it is to figure out exactly how far it is from the camera to your lens, to your subject matter, using traditional technology, not using LiDAR. If you had LiDAR, okay, I get it. It's easy. But a measuring tape, that's not easy, man, to figure out exactly what the distance is, because you're measuring, okay, you might say that's 3 feet or 1 meter, Okay, you might say your distance from the camera to the subject is 1 meter. Sure, it's 1 meter, but is it 1 meter or 0.98 centimeter or 0.98 meters, 98 centimeters, or is it 1 meter and 3 centimeters? You don't know, because is your tape exactly? Are you measuring the exactness? Is it perfectly lined up, or is it, or are you on a bias a little bit? You could be off, or wait till you get like 2.5 meters. All right, 6 feet, which is a more common distance. Right now, between me and the camera is about 5 feet, so about 2.5, or no, about 1.7 meters or so. But is it 1.7, or is it 1.76, or is it 1.765? And if my depth of field calculator says my depth of field takes me to 1.76, does that mean I'm in focus now, or does that mean I'm slightly off of focus? It's hard. Precision in the real world is extremely, extremely hard to do. People take it for granted, like how easy it is. In the digital world, it's so easy. You just adjust this, boom, boom, boom. Real world, I'm ranting, man. I'm on a roll ranting now. I'm sorry, guys. I bet you guys, this is what you turn into. This is what you turn into. This is what you tune into. There you go. My thumb is 30 degrees, 30 minutes of sun travel. Let's figure that out. Remember, I did a video where I was trying to show, remember the Apollo 13 movie? Tom Hanks puts his thumb up in the sky and he covers up the moon, and it perfectly matches. And then every time I check it, though, my thumb is about 3 times the size of the moon. If I hold it all the way out, my thumb is 3 moon widths. I either have a really fat thumb, or Ron Howard lied to me in that movie. Your thumb is bigger than the moon. So what is that? I think 30 minutes is how many degrees? I'm trying 30. Well, it's 12. 30 minutes should be like. Was that 30 degrees? No, it can't be 30. No. Never mind. Shoot myself. That was horrible. How could it be 30 degrees? I forget. I can't do the math, and I've got the lights on me. I can't do the pressure. I can't think straight. Let's go to another comment. Somebody will chime in with the proper number. Dado, I still worry about it because I still do a lot of work with CRTs and SD, but fair as that's understandable niche these days. Yeah, I finally got rid of my last CRT television, and I had one of the early model HD CRT widescreen TVs. It was big, it was bulky, and I was in the process of just clearing out my house, and I thought, I'm just gonna take it to the recycling place and recycle it. And I take it over there and like, dude, you could probably eBay that for a lot more money. I'm like, just take it. I don't want it. I don't want to deal with it. And then just recently I watched a Linus Tech Tips video where he talks about CRT televisions and gaming. He's like, these go for a lot of money. I'm like, God damn it. Like, oh well, whatever. Life's life. And Tony says, hope you're doing good. I'm doing all right. I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm having a great time, but I'm doing all right. We're hanging in there. Let's see here. The work of a man with an ox for a day. Is that an acre? You know what's funny? So I was on I hate these things. So on Facebook, somebody was saying, did you know that a horsepower is the power of 4 horses? And I thought, oh, that's weird. Why would I make a horsepower? I thought the horse was a horsepower of 1 horse. No, a horse can do 15 horsepower. Did you know one horse can be 15 horsepower? And they're like, well, yeah, that was weird. So I looked it up. And the fact of the truth is, yes, a horse can maximum put out 15 horsepower. If you like push it to its limit, it'll do 15 horsepower. But a horsepower is actually the power of 1 horse over the course of a day or something like that, or it's the average output of a draft horse, not the maximum output. It's the average output. So that got me pissed off. It's like all you people out there like creating these fake factoids. Did you know that a horsepower isn't really No, it's a freaking horsepower is the average of a draft horse, something like that. Or average output of a draft horse for an hour or something like that, whatever it is. But there actually is a single horse equivalent of a horsepower. But sure, yeah, a horse can put out more than 1 horsepower because you can drive the poor animal to do extra work. You can beat it, it'll give you a 15 horsepower. Anyhow, that's just me. I honestly hate the internet sometimes. Yep, up and down over here. Got to keep our heads up either way. Yep. Hitchcock says, what is HFR? I think we just finally decided high for real. I think that was the ultimate definition of HFR. High for real. Really freaking high. That's RFH. Okay, more unnecessary metric versus imperial rant. A paper format is superior. Oh, square. I disagree. Square root of 2 is a ratio wonderful for scaling. I disagree. You know why? What is 1/2 of your A paper format? Quick, tell me. What is it? It's like, what, 237.3 millimeters? What's 1/2 of 8.5 by 11? 4 1/4. So if you do graphic design, right? I mean, sure, the whole metric paper thing is this is really cool metric paper because they're all the same. They're all the same ratios, and that's. I mean, again, it is cool. It is cool. But how many times in my life do I have to figure out to blow up one sheet of paper to a B-size paper to a C? How many times do I do that in my life? Versus how many times do I have to figure out, okay, I've got a sheet of paper, what's the exact halfway point of it? That's most of my life is figuring out the exact half of a sheet of paper. But if I have the metric paper, it's this crazy number that's not even in 8.5 by 11 is, for me, it's super easy. 8.5 by 11, 8.5. Whereas I don't know what is the A paper dimensions. I'm gonna look it up. Metric paper sizes. Metric paper sizes. All right, so A2 is 594 by 420 millimeters. All right, so half of 594 is 297. So 297 is the halfway point of an A2. 420 is 210. Okay, so now I have to remember all these digits. Okay, so 594, 420. I can remember the 420. That's easy. 594. Okay, remember that. Then I can do the odd math, where I can do 8.5 divided by 2 is 4 1/4. So much easier. So much easier. I too saw that video by, I want to say it's not what's his face, not Vsauce, one of those other guys that made a video about that. I get it. It's cool. It's a spiral. It just keeps getting, one side's is equal to the side of the other. They're all versions of each other, but I find that incredibly difficult to wrap my head around. Russian's boss says, reposting this because I lost on the metric rant. Please repost. If I'm ranting about something, feel free to repost. I'm actually going to be filming a short film this weekend. Any advice on how to navigate film festival circuit post-COVID? No advice on that whatsoever. I feel like, honestly, at this point, I feel like by the time you finish your movie, we will be past COVID. Okay, I'm not going to get myself in trouble. I'm pretty sure, because Fauci has said the pandemic is over. So I think I'm safe to say it. The pandemic is over. People have gotten back to their lives. I think, and if people are going to be uncomfortable going to the movie theater because of COVID, they're not going to go to a film festival. So you're going to lose some people that are just scared to go out. I get that. That's reality. I think you're okay now. I don't think there's anything you need to do, especially to navigate film festival circuit. Again, depends on your tolerance. If you are afraid of germs and all that, carry hand sanitizer, as best I can tell you. But my own personal beliefs on the matter is we are past it. I even believe if there is a surge in COVID at this point, it wouldn't be enough to justify any more shutdowns or anything like that. I just don't see the public stomaching any more of it. And I think we're beyond that point. No, that's my point. Sorry, Russian boss. I think you'll be fine. Have fun. Make a movie. Get back to normal. Get back to the way people used to be, because we really need to embrace the humanity and not be just shouting at each other from screens. And that's what I feel like what we become. Anyhow, let's see. Oh, you want one so badly because of CRT televisions, CRT monitors, even. They were the bane of my existence. I was happy to get rid of them all, and I don't feel good about going back to it. So now you guys are putting up A4 is 297 by 210. Okay, so in 297, what's the half of 297? That's 193.5. Is that right? It makes it hard to cut them in half. Anyhow. Yeah. No, it's not quite like UHD. You said A4 is like UHD. No, it's not. Because A4, it's the width, right? It's like the width is the same as the height. Because everything is like the width. So essentially, it's sort of like if UHD was, what you call it? I'm blanking here. Vertical video. Or am I getting something wrong? There's another aspect of metric paper. Is A4 and A2 the same or doubling of each other? But if you don't know this, in American imperial paper standards, you also have double sheets too. It's not like they don't have them. They don't have it in the imperial system. Because traditionally paper comes in large sheets, right? And you cut that sheet up into halves. Like that's how you get paper. 8.5 11 started off as, the double of that is 17, right? 8.5, yeah, 17. So we have 11 by 17 paper, which is basically a double, 2 sheets of 8.5 by 11. So we have that. We have the double systems here too. That's not particularly useful that's metric, particularly, what's it called? Unique. My brain's starting to go. Sorry, guys. All right, my head's going on. Mendo Works. How you doing? Johnny Harris. He said he also made a video last night about non-factual information really good. Okay. In fast motion, you see the edges of the frames when they change. Does following the 180-degree shutter exacerbate? Yes, it does. So frankly, now you're going back to the HFR discussion. So what this thing True Cut Motion does, I described earlier how it weights the in-between frame, but you can also use it to push the motion blur. So if you go with a 360 frame rate, try it with the camera one day. Just try shooting 360 frame rate and compare it to like 180. And you'll see the 360 almost has a very video-esque look to it. Believe it or not, a great example of this, and I need to I haven't studied this a whole lot yet, but watch the movie Will You Be My Neighbor? I forget the name. Is it Won't You Be My Neighbor or something like that? It's the Tom Hanks movie where he's Fred Rogers, right? Watch the movie, and in a lot of the shots, especially if you watch it on a TV that has either the black frame insertion or if you watch it on a old LCD or CRT television, the 24 frames a second when it's shot, they're recreating the set of Mr. Rogers, it looks just like video. And when I was watching, like, dude, are they changing frame rate on me? Because the effect was that pronounced, like that was so different. Now, if you watch it on a modern OLED that doesn't have the black frame insertion, you might not see it. But if you watch it on a TV that has the black frame, which gives you a little bit better motion, it looks like video. It's insane. And also the movie Public Enemies, which is a Johnny Depp movie. It was one of the very first movies shot on digital. They use a 360-degree shutter on that. If you watch the trailer, you'll see it does look a little video-esque too. And it had a lot of controversy over that movie because they shot it on the EX1 and EX3 cameras, Sony cameras, back in the day. They have a video. Like part of that is the shutter because they did 360 shutter. So shutter can affect how the motion looks. So again, talking about that, what we just talked about, the true cut motion. Not only do they weight the frames differently on the in between frames, they also adjust the motion blur to reduce the amount of stuttering, or juddering. Yeah. What to have? Just A4 just folded? Yeah, but it doesn't work when you're in Photoshop, like doing a graphic design, trying to figure out the middle of an A4 piece of paper. You can't fold your Photoshop. Did I see the RIPD sequel? So bad, released straight to Blu-ray. No, I didn't. What were we watching? My friend and I were talking about horrible sequels. Like I did a musical called Hunchback of Notre Dame, and it's based on the movie, obviously. So I watched the movie. Went on Disney Plus and I watched Hunchback of Notre Dame, and I was like, it's okay. And it's like, well, it's good except for the damn gargoyles. I mean, they're just bad. Like the weird. It's like I was trying to watch Little Mermaid as well. It's like our imagination of what those old Disney films are. Like we kind of imagine them with a lot less of the goofy, silly humor they used to insert in them. Nowadays, it's acceptable to believe that animation can also be for adults, right? Nowadays, we can say, well, you put an animated movie out. It could be a dark movie. It could be like a real adult story, right? But back in the Disney days, they figured it's a full-length animation. Got to put some goofy crap in it somewhere. Make it friendly for the kids. And you got that stupid, the Hunchback of Notre Dame, you have that goofy, goofy laugh in it. Speaking of which, I'm coughing up here. But yeah, so I watched Hunchback of Notre Dame, and when it finished, the movie's like, hey, would you like to watch Hunchback 2? It's like, oh man. So in the play, by the way, if you didn't know this, I mean, if you saw the original Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hunchback, who's basically, we call him an incel these days. I mean, that's not untrue. He's like, I will never be touched by heaven's light. I love Esmeralda. And then at the very end, Esmeralda and the sun god, what's his name? I forget his name. I don't know. The blonde, good-looking guy. They fall in love, and poor Quasi over there is like, I changed my mind. I'm not in love with you. Like, dude, what the hell? That's such a lame cop-out. And in the play, he dies. So there's that. Spoilers! No, Hunchback is dead. And Esmeralda's dead, too. They're all dead. Everyone dies at the end of Hunchback of Notre Dame. Frollo's dead. Hunchback's dead. Esmeralda's dead. I think the blonde guy in the play survives. But anyhow. No, it's not The Burbs. The Burbs is not the Tom Hanks movie. It's called Won't You Be My Neighbor, I think is the name of the movie. Or is that the documentary? It's one of those. Anyhow. Hello, it's been a long time. What's your opinion on the Sigma 17 to 50 f2.8 lens? I don't think I have that. I have a Tamron. The only Sigma lens I have is a 12 to 14, and I think it's awesome because it's just a cool look and it's pretty sharp. It's pretty good. I'm just not crazy about Sigmas, but I think you'd be better off looking some more specific reviews of that lens because I don't have any particular experience with that. And I'm not that into breaking apart lenses. Although I do notice when lenses are not that sharp. CRTs are the bane of my existence too. They have incredible properties for making analog video feedback and can create near neon looking colors modern flat panels can't replicate. That's true. That is true. Anyhow, the time is at 5:30. I've been on for how long? I don't know. I've been on for a while. How long have I been streaming for? No, it should not tell me. Since 3:45. 4:45? Oh, it's been an hour and a half or so. All right, well, that's about all I've got today. So we're teaching. I'm wrapping up my class here in a couple months. Well, not next month. The class will be over. My first semester teaching done. That'll be awesome. So tomorrow tomorrow is class day, and I will be going through my video on the blocking experiment. So that'll be fun. That'll be fun. And then Friday is a break day because it's Veterans Day here in the States. So I'll be shooting a veterans videotaping, a veterans video recording, a veterans event, and then I've got Mariachi Fest that day as well. So that'll be fun. 17 to 50 is garbage. I had all three Sigma, Canon, Nikon variants. Nikon for the win every day, any day. There you go. There's an opinion. I miss get aimed by an electron gun from the CRTs. Oh yeah, getting shot at by an electron gun. It's always a fun part of life. Any last burning questions? Anyone hang out? Last comments before I get going and probably go to the store and buy food. I keep thinking that I want to go buy some like fast food or something for dinner, but like I keep coming back to the fact I don't want to pay that much for one meal. So now we're gonna get John's cooking tips. I've been obsessed with cooking shows on YouTube for a while. I've been watching a lot of Ragusia. Ragusia is really good. He's like to me, he's the kindred spirit of Alton Brown, and Alton Brown was one of my heroes. As you can, I think most men who cook love Alton Brown because that guy is like just he hits all our manly notes. Men who cook. here's a very sexist remark. Men probably today are better cooks than women are. I think men have more of a aptitude for the science of cooking. I think women have given up on cooking altogether. I think women, and I'm not saying all women obviously, but I feel like men in general are better at cooking than women, and that'll get me banned. I'm sure I'm canceled immediately for saying that. But I think I follow a lot of male cookers. There's not a lot of, think about it. There's not a whole lot of female celebrity chefs anymore, are there? Mostly it's men, because it's become sort of a male domain now. Cooking, at least high-end cooking, has become like a male domain. So yeah, I've been watching a lot of cooking shows. My friend got me into Uncle Roger, so I was trying to cook some fried rice, and I did a terrible job. Horrible. He'd be pissed at me. What kind of Asian are you? You're not good. Anyhow, so I've been doing a lot of cooking, my own cooking, and I did get myself I did buy like a $40 a brisket. Now, I usually balk at the idea of spending $40 on a piece of meat, but I gotta admit that brisket's lasted me a long time, and I got a meat slicer because of it, because I want to do the slicing, deli slicing. Wonderful purchase, awesome purchase. $90, and I can slice my own meat. Now, I want to roast a bunch of stuff and slice it and make sandwiches because they're awesome. Anyhow, Dan D Animal for Life. Excuse me. All I know is the best camera is whatever I'm using because I refuse to admit I'm wrong. You're not wrong. You're not wrong, actually. The best camera for you at the moment is the one you have. Cook spaghetti. It's fast, easy, not really nutritious. Pour them over a salad, make them more tasty. Salad and spaghetti does not sound good. Ugh. But I do love spaghetti. It's easy. Yeah, it's not nutritious. I mean, well, it's got tomatoes. Thanks, appreciate your perspective. Thank you very much for watching. Do you remember old CRT cameras? They had tiny black, I have them. CRT has a viewfinder, a few kilovolts next to your head. Exactly. Russia boss says, I am a woman and I will fight you on that, John. Just because sciencey doesn't mean they get better cooks. You're not wrong. I mean, you're not. I'm not saying all women are bad cooks. I'm just saying. I think in terms of the way that I don't know, the way women have become. It feels like women are more, just not as interested in cooking as men are. Like men get into hobbies, and cooking can be a hobby for a lot of men. I'm going to say women don't do it too. I think women maybe geared more toward baking. I don't know. I think most women would probably be more on the baking side of things. I think that's a lot more of a male-female dichotomy. But Like cooking, like with fire and stuff, is more for men. Or more men are getting into it. And this is okay. This is just fun. We're just having fun with it. Don't take it too seriously. Mindo Works is really trying to start a fire. Anything technical, men dominate over for a reason. Emoji. we are different. It's okay. Absolutely. And what woman wouldn't want a man who can cook a beautiful dinner? Ladies, or lady in the chat, wouldn't you agree that isn't there nothing sexier than a man who can cook really well? Right? Right? Sure. Yep. Buckwheat with tomatoes, nutritious, easier than even spaghetti. Oh, there you go. I can't enjoy cooking because I have no sense of smell. Therefore, I can't taste normal people like normal people. Oh, that sucks. So it tastes the same no matter what. Well, it should make cooking really easy for you then. Paula Deen? Yeah, Paula Deen has been... But Paula Deen's kind of old school. Paula Deen ruined it for everybody. Too much butter. And now I'm canceled. I'm forever banned. Because I said women don't cook as much as men, as well as men. But, like, think about it. Like, Gordon Ramsay, the Uncle Roger keeps making fun of Jamie Oliver. Although Uncle Roger has a couple female chefs that are really, really good. And they're really cute, too. But they're really, really good. Russian boss says, it's like, okay, I admit, man can cook has my approval. She is the boss. Russian boss 037. All right. On that Russian boss's approval, get out there, men. Make a film. Cook something good. Cook something good for the women in your life, right? That's what we men have to do now. We don't have to go hunt so far. We don't have to go, hunting, tracking animals and killing them. We now bring them home and roast them for our women folk. That is so incredibly old school sexist. All right, guys, I'm gonna take off and go get some food so I can cook it, and I'll talk to you guys later. We'll make some films. We'll make some videos. Damn it! We'll see you later. He's cooking. Danny's gonna make some top tier cereal. All right, guys, we'll see you later. Take care now. Fade to black. You still here? You still here? Stream's over, guys. Go home. Bye.